Hello, hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to bring to you a conversation that I had with a personal coach. She's a custody strategist. She helps women who are navigating divorce communicate and, in her words, outsmart a toxic ex in court. Her own personal experience going through court and fighting for her children without a lawyer based on her own past experiences being a paralegal. Not so much a family and court law paralegal, but she has a lot of experience just navigating court-to-court documents, and she uses that expertise to help clients as well. I wanted her to join me on this podcast to talk about some of the things that are just a little bit harder to discuss because they are activating. They are emotionally charged topics in conversation, and I wanted her expertise, her experience, both personally and professionally, to join me in the conversation today. I think it will be very insightful. Even though it is a hard topic to listen to, I really feel like when you apply the principles that we talk about today, it will absolutely help you have an empowered divorce. Remember, this is why I named the podcast an empowered divorce, because all of the things that I talk about, that I share, that when you apply, it will help you move through the hardest time that many of you have ever had in your entire life, to not get stuck in victim, which can be really easy to do when you go through some of these extremely challenging, abusive, high toxic experiences. We've got to find our way through. And so I'm excited to have Bridget join me in this conversation today. I want to remind everybody to join me for the first Thursday of every month for a free coaching session. If you have not registered for that already, do so, because you will get that reminder, because sometimes you forget, of that session the day before and then an hour before we join. Really great free resource to take advantage of there. All right, everyone, here's my conversation with Bridget. I was telling you before we hit record, one of the things that stood out to me, that resonated, that I feel like we don't have enough voices in this field to speak towards, is that high conflict but toxic cycles that were a part of the relationship prior to separation and divorce continue and often escalate post-separation and divorce. It can make co-parenting, parallel parenting quite difficult. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'd love for you to add to your bio. I know you have a little bit more of extensive background, especially in the legal area, which is what really resonated. I was like, well, okay, I want that. I think my listeners will appreciate your background, not only personally, but professionally, to hear some hard things that I know are so hard to hear when it comes to how to navigate these really muddy waters. So please feel free to further introduce yourself and share a little bit about you.
Of course. Thank you. First of all, I'm honored to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I have an interesting background. I've been married twice to 2 abusers, and I've been divorced twice. I have 4 kids, and I've been a paralegal for over 20 years. I've never worked in the field of family law. In fact, I practice in civil litigation and injury law. I found myself, when I was going through my second divorce, I didn't have any money. I was supporting 4 kids by myself. I needed to file for divorce. I needed to file for custody. I did all of that on my own. I filed later on for modification and contempt, but I started out with 50-50 custody through the mediation process. And I've come to learn that even though that was not really the best thing that was suited for me or for my kids at the time, it was allowing the high conflict parent, giving them a lot of rope and opportunities to co-parent and to parent these children, and watching them as they sadly were hanging themselves all on their own without me really having to do a whole lot. And I had to come to a place of a lot of radical acceptance of understanding who he was, what was really happening in that dynamic. It took me some time to fully understand. But, the abuse that we endured during those relationships is terrible. But the post-separation abuse period that we see, I feel, is much more insidious. The abuse does worsen when you leave your toxic relationship. That's not anyone's imagination.
Nope.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It's quite audacious how many times that gets minimized, ignored, or blamed, placed on the victim, the person leaving. I'm going to go ahead and genderize because most of my listeners are women. But when the woman does leave and it does escalate, why can't you just move on? Why can't you get over it by now? You're holding on. All of those unfortunate statements get made. And yet, a lot of times it's so covert in how it's presenting. I'll speak for myself. I felt crazy because it was crazy making type of abuse, right? That's the
Yes.
coercion and covert abuse, and everyone else can't see it. You do. You see it even more post, and yet it's hard to still describe and explain. So I appreciate you validating that. It's very challenging to navigate.
Yes, it is. And it is crazy making. I remember having sessions with my therapist who has been phenomenal. And I believe everyone should really have a great benefit from having a therapist, but especially through this process and building your support team. But she did tell me, she said, Bridget, it's crazy making. It is crazy making. You're not making this up. And I remember colleagues at the firm that I was at the time, I would talk about things that were going on, and it was like, oh, Bridget and the drama. Oh, God, here we go again. Like, why do you always talk about your ex? Why is this, right? And over time, what I've learned is that the abusers, they actually play onto that narrative, and they play it out in family court of she's obsessed with me, right? Which is pure projection, as we know, but she's obsessed. She's still in love with me. Oh, this, oh, the other. She doesn't like that I have a new partner and she's jealous of her, right? And that happened in my case. And I had so many cards stacked against me initially because I had given my ex the benefit of the doubt many times. And then I came to realize that there's something else that's going on that's not right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was, for me, a major turning point. And I had been documenting things. I had been understanding narcissistic abuse to really figure out what was happening. And it wasn't until when I filed for child support, that's when things just went downhill very fast, right? High conflict people, abusers, they love money and material things more than anything else. They like this whole image, and they must protect their image at all cost. And so when I filed to get child support because he wasn't doing what he had said that he would do voluntarily, he hit me with a restraining order, a bogus restraining order that I ended up defeating miraculously. I still to this day don't know how I won and beat him and his attorney. I had an anxiety attack on the stand and I started crying. But I had done everything else up until that point just fine. But then the anxiety just hit me, right? And I won, and it was thrown out and it was dismissed. And that was the first, right, of 2 restraining orders. But it's very interesting to see their behavior and how it switches when you're asking for financial support for yourself or for the kids or whatever. So I don't know if your listeners and people that you work with have seen that they tried to have this financial hold over them. I think it's important that as women, we understand that we are stronger than we really think, right? And we are fierce and we are warriors. And to take power away from the abuser, I have felt and come to learn that it is stepping into my own and finding my own feet and my own grounding from a financial aspect where you give no shits if they pay or if they don't pay, right?
Right.
You
Right.
figure it out.
You do figure it out. My listeners heard me say this analogy so many times, but it's the ropes that we're still picking up that are attached to them in many ways. And we're picking the rope up, and some like child support, like this is valid, a valid thing. It's a legal thing. And some want to pick it up. And yet if that rope that you're picking up, believing it's valid, is often strangling you, then we need to figure out how to let it go. And child support was actually one of those for me. Wasn't paying. He was arrested, in jail several times over it, still wouldn't do it. And I think we're over $200,000 in arrears, and I'll never see it. But at some point, I had to, what you're saying, where am I losing my power and my sanity and my energy and my time with picking up this over and over and over and over, trying to get something that I did deserve, my children deserved. But I love what you said there. It's why I call this the Empowered Divorce Podcast, because
Yeah.
when you find where you can step back in your power and take power back, oftentimes it does require you letting go of something that you have a right to, you deserve. It's a good thing. Child support,
Mhm.
help. And if it's sucking the life out of even strangling you, it isn't ultimately what you need. And
Right.
that did free me up. It did allow me to then build my business. It was housekeeping at the time. And it did. It blew up. And I was somehow able to make it work and figure that out. So I love right out of the gate, you're validating what I believe and say so much, that you are so much more powerful and stronger than they gave you credit for.
Yeah.
And this is another way that you take your power back, believe something different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all capable of doing these hard things. And part of the overcoming what has happened in that relationship is understanding that this narrative that they fed us about ourselves is not true. Right. And they wanted us, they did a number on us, and they wanted us to feel that we could not survive in this life without them. But here we are, right? You and I are great examples of we are living and thriving. We're not just surviving, we're thriving and we're doing well. And I think the faster that us as women can see that, the better off we will be,
Mm.
even though it's not right, right? You can't expect justice from child support enforcement, or even the family court system, right? We can't expect justice, but it's learning to accept these things and letting go of what no longer serves us.
Which is so, so hard to accept. I had another question in mind, but I kind of want to stay with what you just said there. Can you talk more about that acceptance? It's a huge pillar of healing to be able to accept that piece. But would you mind just talking about what you generally see in your work, where those hiccups are? What makes it so hard to accept? And how do you see that actually perpetuate the disempowerment and victim cycle?
Yes. So for most of my clients, it's challenging for them to accept that this person is not ever going to change. They're not going to improve. Their behavior is not going to get better. And sometimes we have all been guilty of this. We get like this glimmer of hope. No, they're suddenly being nice, right? But if you watch that behavior and you're tracking that behavior over a period of time, we see this pattern, right? When they're nice and then it's bad. And the same things happen in the relationship. It's very much this roller coaster-esque type of behavior. And understanding they're not going to change, it is up to me to set these boundaries and to hold my boundaries. And that became for me how I loved myself. That was the biggest expression of self-love, was for me to learn how to set boundaries. As I call myself a people pleaser or a codependent in rehab. Okay. Learning that is really challenging. And at first, setting those boundaries feels like you're doing something wrong. You feel guilty by doing it, and you don't want to hurt the other person and you don't want them to feel bad. But the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, right? So I think the first thing is understanding that their behavior is not going to change. Okay. And the next I see is where you want your kids to have the fathers that they deserve, right? You want them to have this good daddy. And that's normal. That is normal behavior. It's a normal thought that we all have experienced. And I think validating that first is important, right? Understanding this is normal. But knowing that this person that is their father is not going to be what we had hoped and expected them to be, and radically accepting that, right? There's nothing that you've done wrong. And also, I think teaching our children that they are loved, that we love them, that they are wonderful just the way they are, because they, at some point or another, they're navigating that relationship with our high conflict ex and have feelings of guilt, shame, not feeling good enough. And so for us to validate them and to, when they come back home, undo all of the bad things that have happened at the other parent's house, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And that is
Yeah.
a challenge in of itself. We're talking about kids here. And that's where I see a lot of us get stuck right there in going back to what we're talking about. Okay, sure, I can drop the rope But if I drop it to free myself, then now our children are picking it up, or the ex is chucking it at the child and forcing them to pick it up. Either way, the impact on the child is, and I'm air quoting, too great that it makes it hard to let go of the rope. So it feels easy for us to say, on one hand, y'all need to free yourself. You need to fire yourself. Let that go. Move on. It's not worth it. All the things. But can we talk a little bit about this really huge piece? Because it will, for a time, most likely, amp up the children. Because if once they realize they can't control you, because you put those boundaries up, you stop, they're going to go to the next thing that hurts you the most, which is the children. And so it's almost, yes, that's going to happen. I won't say 100%. I never 100% anything, but let's just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. If and when that happens, what do you usually say to that? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that is the hardest part of coaching my clients and teaching them that when the kids come home, again, it's our job to validate and recognize what they're feeling. I noticed that when children transition back from the abuser's house, the high conflict person's house, back home, I call it like this pressure cooker effect. And they are so
jet lag.
Yes, right. They're really emotionally dysregulated. They're throwing a fit. There's temper tantrums, whatever, and they're mean. So I have learned that in those scenarios, and I did this with my kids, was to really not have anything scheduled right after the transition time, but to just allow them some space. Be like, hey, I know, you know what, let's go and sit down and maybe let's color something together. Or if you want to hang out in your room for a bit, that I'm perfectly fine, right? And just have something more mellow for them to come home to, but providing the kids space. And it is our job, it is our duty as protective parents to teach our children how to regulate their emotions because they have big feelings. Typically, our generation, we were not taught how to regulate our emotions, right? And so it is our job to teach our children and also be a safe space for them, right? They are not able to escape this relationship. You did, but to be a safe space. And you never have to badmouth the other parent. I've never badmouthed my exes. I've let my children figure things out on their own in a way that was very much their own process. All of my 4 kids have felt different things, have gone through different things, and have decided when enough was enough for each of them on their own time. Right?
Yep.
And
it does happen if you give them that space because you're giving them the safety and the emotional support to see the difference, feel the difference, embody the difference in your space. So what you said there, we did escape, but we did also provide a separation from that high conflict parent that they are with 50 whatever percent of the time to start noticing the difference in their system. So it does make a difference. It just takes time. And that's what's really hard, right? Is to wait.
the waiting is the challenge, right? It is a challenge. And we get the bad behaviors. We get all of these behaviors. And I had that with my kids. And I'll never forget, I made the mistake of contacting my ex at one point and saying, hey, I'm having an issue with the child. They're acting up. They're just doing these things. And I'm not sure what to do. Maybe we could have a conversation together, right? With the child. You can say something and I can say something else. And I'll never forget, he said to me, that sounds like a you problem. He doesn't act that way with me. That sounds like a you problem. So again, I had efforts to want to co-parent, but there is no co-parenting. In the eyes of family court, we have to co-parent. But in actuality, we're parallel parenting. So I got to this place of, okay, dad's going to do things at his house at a certain time. He knows what the bedtime is. He's asked me about the bedtime. If he's having them on devices all hours of the night and they're not sleeping, my kids are going to suffer, right? But at my house, I can control the rules. I can control the environment. I cannot control what my ex does, thinks, feels, or how he is parenting, right? And that is really, really hard because we want to make sure that our children have stability at both homes, but this is not a normal, nor is it a healthy co-parenting dynamic. And I use that word co-parenting even though that's not what we're doing, to try to get people in the habit of using it when it comes to family court professionals, going to court with guardian ad litems, parenting coordinators, so on and so forth, even therapists, because this parallel parenting is looked down upon in family court and they don't use that term.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad you're validating that. This is definitely a hot topic because it does feel very invalidating to those of us who see the reality and see the truth and see what is actually happening to our children. And when it's not being seen or validated, especially from those that you feel or think should protect and see it, like the judge or your lawyer or even the guardian ad litems, they don't often see it.
Yeah.
So you're correct. We need to acknowledge that this is how others are seeing it, but I'm always a proponent of validate yourself. And if you have a couple close, safe people in your corner to help validate this isn't real co-parenting, you are alone in a lot of this. You are dealing with so much repair when your kids come back. My rule of thumb was like, give them 24 hours before
Yeah.
we get back on the rules of this house because of that jet lag. And it's a thing. It's very real. Those are the adjustments and the accommodations that we make to continue to support our children in a healthy way. But the language that we need to use in court, mediation, with the other parent is of a co-parent framework. Can you talk about what that looks like with a high conflict parent? And this is where a lot of your content really stood out to me. I'm going to backtrack. Would you first talk about maybe some of those signs that an ex is baiting you into conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. It typically happens in writing, right? Because again, I'm a big proponent of we have to communicate with them in writing, all things in writing. You don't want to get into phone conversations or
Or in
in-person interactions. Yes, yes. But, the baiting comes from there will be like these little micro attacks. There'll be attacks on our parenting. There will be complaints or allegations that you're neglecting the kids, that they're not bathed, that their fingernails cut. I don't know what it is with all these high conflict people, but something my ex even did this was like, you haven't cut their fingernails. And it was the most outlandish accusation. But, it's these little things over and over again. Or if you feel that they are like a one-upper, high conflict people are one-uppers of, well, I did this or I did the other. They're wanting you to be in a position because you've done this in the relationship where you're defending yourself, where you are proving yourself. You are proving I'm a good mom, right? I'm good. I can do these things. And so recognizing that from the get-go will save you thousands of dollars, first of all, in family court with an attorney, but also it's going to save your sanity. It's going to save your sanity. And I don't defend. We don't justify. We also don't attack the other parent, right? When they're saying something back. So that is the first way that I tell. Also, I see most high conflict people, they pick these fights with you or these little arguments of the kids must send their belongings back to my house. So clothing, backpacks, lunch boxes, containers, water bottles, the most minute things that these are belongings of the children. The high conflict parent takes possession of because I bought it. It's mine. It needs to come back to me, or I need these things back. And I tell all of my clients, we don't engage, right? If they have the items on and they're sending it back to Dad's house, great. And when you get those kinds of messages, we just send something simply back of, got it, received, thank you, that's it, got it. But something like that is so minimal will help to de-escalate versus sending pictures. Okay, here's her little pink sweater, that Samantha's going to wear back. And we don't get involved in those things. I think the logistics part of that is knowing how to minimize the conflict on your own. And I know we were talking before we started recording about gray rocking or yellow rocking. And I did a lot of yellow rocking before in my journey. I then transitioned. I was trained from the High Conflict Institute by Bill Edding, and he created BIF, the BIF method, which is brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And I have found that helps over time to de-escalate the conflict. And in fact, in the eyes of family court, it helps us look like we are a good co-parent, right? And that is key, right? It is key to put ourselves in a position where it looks like we are co-parenting with someone where this feels like it's an impossible job to do.
Yeah. Can you talk about the friendly part of this? This has come up, and again, with my audience who have experienced abuse, continue to experience abuse, I just want to validate how triggering that can feel to be told you need to be friendly. Would you break that down on what you really mean by how that actually translate in communication? Because
Yeah, no.
let me preface, sorry to interrupt, because here's what I hear back and what I experience is that any friendliness oftentimes is like the green light for the other high conflict parent to engage even more. I would say to my mom, "Oh my gosh, you give an inch, he takes a mile." Like, all I did was, because I didn't want to say anything to him, smile, and that was an invitation for him to give me more information than I ever want to hear, or think that we're on good terms and buddy. And
No.
no, we're effing not. So I just want to validate. There's a lot of my clients' brains are probably going there when you said that. So would you clarify how that actually translate when we're dealing with high conflict?
Yeah. So first of all, it is triggering, right? And it feels really gross to start doing. The friendly aspect of it is can be something very simple to start out. And it's starting our communication with a salutation. Hi. Hi, John. Right? Ending our messages with thanks, Bridget. Those things right there, it keeps the tonality of the message friendly. But if I were to send a message to someone, for example, I would say, "Hi, John. Let's say I needed to provide an update to the other parent. Okay. Hi, John. I hope all is well." Do I really hope that all is well? No. But what did I do in my brain? I have now retrained my brain to know that when I say that, it's like, kiss my ass, asshole. Okay. That's literally what I'm doing. Okay. So I hope all is well. I wanted to share with you that the kids are playing soccer. They're doing really well. They have a game this weekend, whatever the quick update is. And when it's brief, we want to keep it to a few sentences. We don't want to have lengthy messages or lengthy paragraphs ever. And a lot of people get stuck in that cycle.
Yeah.
We want to keep it very brief, informative. We give Yes, unemotional. We're keeping just it based on information. What is the information that we are sharing? And that's it, right? I could say, "Hey, I'll send another update in a few weeks," or I'll make sure I'll share with you additional information when I receive it. Let's say from maybe it's a doctor, a teacher, whatever, right? That's the tone that's in the message, right? The minute that you drop the friendly, and over time, we see a de-escalation of conflict. It does work. It happens over time. In fact, in 95% of all cases where I am coaching my clients on communication, we start using the Biff method and we see that the high conflict person starts to mirror that behavior. Their messages start to look just like ours. "Hi, Bridget. Thanks, John," right? The same setup, even from the way that I space out the messages. They are mirroring your behavior, and they understanding why that happens is understanding the personality disorder. They're disordered. They can't help themselves, and they mirror behavior that they actually admire. So that means in their brain, they think that you're doing something that's good. They like it. They're copying it because they don't feel good enough, right? This is not for us to feel sorry for them, but rather understanding, why the hell are they copying what I'm doing? Why do they do this with me? That's the why, right? So that is the friendly aspect. It is not to give a green light to the abuser to continue to abuse. Let's say you're at a parent teacher conference or an open house at the school and the abuser's also there, right? The ex is there. Doesn't mean you have to talk to them. You can keep it very neutral and you can just be like, "Okay, hey." If you're with the kid, "Oh, I'm fine if you want to go say hi to dad." Sometimes kids, and I lived through this as a child, you feel between a rock and a hard place because you have this loyalty that you are expected to maintain with the high conflict person.
Yeah.
And then you have your safe person. And you know that the safe person's not going to be upset with you, at least to the degree that the high conflict person was, right? So you tend to favor over time and please the high conflict person so that as a child, you're staying out of trouble.
Hey everyone, quick pause. If this conversation is hitting home, my Believing in You group coaching program is where you get coaching, community, and real support while you walk through the hard stuff that we're talking about today and so much more. Each week, I will teach tools that you can use right away, attachment basics that you can actually feel in your body, boundaries that protect your peace, self-love that is grounded and doable, how to heal from betrayal, abuse, and divorce using my awareness, acceptance, and agency framework. It is for women who are ready to heal, ready to grow, and ready to take their healing to the next level. We meet Wednesday evenings. If you can't make it live, every session is recorded, so you never miss the work. You will get coaching from me, connection from women who get it, and a space that keeps you steady while life feels anything but steady. Join me, grow, heal, thrive. Head to my website, amiewoolsey.com. The link is also in the show notes. And look for Believing in You to learn more and to save your spot. It's way more dangerous to stand up, to be honest, to be real with the high conflict. And that's confusing too for a lot of my clients, because it's like, why am I being treated this way or neglected or ignored or unfavored? It's really not about you. It is about the dynamic of the abuse that's now transferring and even greater to the child. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And I would say friendly in the eyes of the court. Again, if you are in the middle of still mitigating, navigating this dynamic, and even after it's sealed, stamped, there is potential for you to
going
be
back.
right going back to court. So you want to maintain this. And I would just say, if this is difficult for you emotionally, then just throw that in the friendly in the eyes of the court after, if that helps separate this emotionally. But thank you for clarifying that. It really does help take the emotion out of it. Then will you also, so again, now I'm thinking, okay, you mentioned earlier the long ass text message from the other side that have maybe one sentence of what you actually legally need to respond to, and the other is just BS. So can you talk about how to navigate that? Because those will send you into that internal spiral, and you want to just rant and rave. I'll speak again for myself. For a while before I learned these skills, it was this break free of abuse, needing to finally have a voice, want to have a voice, defend myself, never play into that again. So that on one hand, I wanted to say something because I was done with him believing these false things about me and getting away with it. So it was like, oh, I will spend all day text, and clarifying how you are wrong and all that. I would, the amount of hours that I would spend.
You and me both.
Sending it to friends and my parents, and what does this sound? And how about this? And oh, well, you should say this. So it's exhausting, it's taxing, it's taking you away from work and all the things, right? Can you talk about that?
I can. So, I am right there with you. I was guilty of this initially, right? I had done all the things. And first and foremost, if we understand that the abuser is now controlling us through our time, that is why they send the back to back to back messages, right? I hope and I encourage anyone that is divorcing someone that is high conflict to get on to a co-parent communication app. OFW, our family wizard.
Please, please, please.
Yes, Talking Parents. There's so many out there now. Those are my two favorite. I prefer Talking Parents over OFW. I don't really like the tone meter in OFW, but sometimes the court orders that. Get onto a parenting app, right? Yeah. If you're not on that, and if you have them on your text or it's email, whatever, I want you to turn off your notifications. Okay. Nothing from a high conflict person is an emergency. It's not urgent. They have trained you during the relationship to believe that it is, and they need your instant attention, your instant response. Don't fucking do it. Right. Sorry. Oh, I cursed.
It's okay. I do too. No worries.
Okay. I should have asked first, but
you're good.
Anyways, so first of all, turning off the notifications. Pick a time of day that works best for you to read these messages, to engage in these messages, because you know that it's going to trigger you. and you're instantly going to feel bad and full of anxiety or guilt, right? So even then, at that time of day when you're checking your message, open it up, recognize, how does this message make me feel? Put the device down and walk away, right? Later, if you need to come back to it, I like doing like a purge, right? And I just coached a group of clients on this the other day. Open up a Google Doc, right? Open up the note section on your phone, write out what you really want to say, and then put it down, walk away. And come back to it later, and you're going to delete what you put in there. You're going to delete the whole message, and you're going to start over. And so for that long, lengthy message, right? Why is it lengthy? They're accusing you of something, which automatically triggers us to want to defend ourselves and to respond and show that this is a false narrative. Well, I have to document it in the communication so that they know that this is not true. No, you don't. No, you don't. You are adding to the conflict. Document things privately, not through your communication, right? And now, does it serve as evidence in court? Of course it does, right? But that's not the purpose of us communicating back. So you're going to take their message and think of in your brain, I've got a little red pen. I'm going to mark through everything that is not important. None of this is relevant. I'm going to respond to this little chunk here, right? It's talking about the exchange. We've got to change the time of the exchange because it's not going to work for them. Okay. How can I respond to this? That is learning how to break this up, right? I don't believe in getting into tit for tats, right? They're probably going to immediately ping your phone back because that's what they do. They're going to immediately read those messages. Do not engage. That is not your time to have a conversation with them because they know what you're doing at that precise time. You are responding to their messages. Walk away. Your rule is, I'm going to check this once every 24 hours and I'll come back to it. You send your message and you're on your way. Now, if it's something logistical for transition purposes, let's say they're running 30 minutes late to the exchange. Okay. If you need to check it again at the time that you're at the location or the time that they said they would be there and they're not there, that is perfectly fine. But don't get into this back and forth tit for tat type of communication with them. It's so unhealthy and it is only exhausting you emotionally.
It really is. As you're talking, just all of these memories are flooding back of how exhausting that was and how real it felt, the threat and the fear to not respond. So I just want to validate that. Like I felt like I would get in trouble because you think I would get in trouble. Well, I have to respond and I have to say, because going back to what we were talking about, like we want the courts to see that we're trying to co-parent and be amicable and figure it out. And so if I don't respond, then he sends me 50 emails saying, you're not being responsive. You are alienating the children because you are not responsive, because I'm not responding every 5 minutes. And so those fear tactics and manipulation that is just fire away. I absolutely believed it. It was paralyzing. And when you don't want to lose your children and there's already emotion tagged to that, I just want to validate how hard this is. I think for some of you who are really fresh in this and you're maybe going, okay, but I'm responding just like they're saying not to.
Right.
Right. You're probably afraid because those fear tactics are really coming your way. So I just want to reiterate what you said there. 24 hours is reasonable in response. If you're consistent and when you respond, it's reasonable in the eyes of court. If you're an email, you probably tell your clients this too. Same thing, put it in a special folder. All their emails go to a folder, and then you choose when you go into that folder. We're trying to mitigate that nervous system trauma response. And when you get the ding, I would freeze every time. Or when I opened to check my email for work, there his name was, and I would have a trauma response. So these are
and your whole day is ruined, right? Because they've suddenly reached out and I was going to have a great day. I was so prepared for the day. I look super cute today. And then boom. Oh God.
And even though I know I'm not going to respond to the night, I am thinking about what he might be saying and asking and demanding and how I might be responding until 5 o'clock.
Right? The anxiety is real, right? The buildup
That's
is real. Oh my God, but I've got to check this message. And it's like, the way I like to look at it is if you feel addicted, right? It's almost like an addiction.
No,
we
it is.
need to know what they're saying, or I'm going to have to defend myself. And
Yeah.
recognizing that addicting type of feeling and learning how to cut it off, right? Because we are trauma bonded to this person. It takes a long
Yes.
time to break the trauma bond, but it's actively recognizing what is happening, which can be very challenging. And we all face the threats of, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to take you back to court. I'm going to talk to my attorney. Let
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
let them, let them, let them, right? Who cares? You're not
Yeah.
doing anything wrong, right? Let them threaten you. Let them claim that you are alienating the children. Let them send you 50 messages and look like an ass that is controlling and harassing. That's actually more favorable for you, right?
It really is. And I will say this, and it's hard to a lot of my clients to wrap their head around that because, yes, your nervous system is still attached in this hypervigilant, threat protective way. I get that. But I'm going to reiterate what you said because it's so true. Yes, and practice recognizing that and shifting. And these are where the boundaries come in. Boundaries. Can you talk a little bit more? It always comes back to the kids. We'll talk like this, and my clients will bring it right back to the kids. So, what can women do to protect their kids emotionally when the ex is thriving on that drama? And here's the example that came to my mind. When I drew the boundary, then he would text my children. And they're in class, in school, and he's, your mom needs to contact me right now. It's an emergency. It was not an emergency. It never was, right? To your point.
Right.
And now they're bringing the kids in. I'm curious your thoughts around how to mitigate that.
I think talking to our children and teaching our children, and I like to do it through storytelling, right? Let's say I would be talking with a girlfriend and I'd be telling them a story of so and so was reaching out to me at work and I had already given them an update and I said I was going to do this, right? I would use a real life type of example that my kids were listening to, or I would even tell my kids these things. But you know what? I decided that I was going to get back to them when I was available again, right? When I had additional information. And I usually used work, maybe another girlfriend, something like that, of how I controlled my own energy as if a piggy bank, right? We're a piggy bank. Every single day, we start out with our emotional piggy bank full.
Mhm.
And we get to choose how we are making withdrawals and how we are depositing back into our piggy bank, right? Because if we're withdrawing, we're going to be in the red. We don't want to be in the red. And so I taught my kids this, and I think it's helpful for us to explain these things to them and be like, hey, I understand that sometimes if they're saying dad's texting me when I'm in class, wow, that how does that make you feel? That seems like but that gets you in trouble at school? Like, how does that make you feel? Asking them questions,
Mhm.
asking our kids how situations make them feel. What do you think about this? Or dad said this. Well, what do you think?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? Why do we do that? Because we're teaching our kids critical skills that they're not learning with someone that's narcissistic, and that is critical thinking,
Right.
right? Having autonomy. And so I like to do that with my kids. Now, when you're seeing this behavior going on, you're not going to message your ex. You're not going to say, stop texting the kids when they're in school. You don't do it because he's baiting you. Instead, you're going to document privately that your ex is involving the children in adult conflict. Family court hates this. They hate it.
They do. They
Hmm.
hate that. It's called triangulation. And if you're
It is.
if they're doing that, let them document, like you said. And then I love what you're saying there, teaching your children correct principles
Yes.
and what healthy communication is, what boundaries are, what protecting your time and energy, knowing what you have a right to and in any relationship. And you can do that without throwing them on your ex, their dad under the bus, right?
You
And so
can.
I love your example there of storytelling or just having a conversation about that and asking them the questions and getting into their minds, coming up with a plan together, really empowering. You're
It
empowering.
is. It is. And then when you do these things, you'll see that they start to implement it in more areas of their life. And at first, I didn't know if this was ever going to work. And my kids also had a great therapist that helped them. So the other thing I would say is get your kids in therapy, right? Don't think that they don't have trauma. They haven't been, they need therapy. right? And a way of sometimes pushing that with someone that's high conflict is they're children of divorce, their parents have divorced and separated, and that's hard for any child, regardless of the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Getting them into therapy, even if they're younger, under the age of 5, play therapy is amazing for kids, okay? But, my kids, again, as I said, I had 4. Their ages 22, 18, 14, and 12, right? I didn't know if any of this was gonna work. And I see my older daughters who've set boundaries, who've let go of friends, who decided on their own time that they were no longer wanting a communication or a relationship with their dad because of the way he was talking to them. They made that call, right? My boys who are younger, understanding that I I don't really like how mom, this girl was like blowing up my phone and like Snapchatting me or something, right? Like whatever the kids use this day with Snapchat. I was like,
Mhm.
mom, it just was so annoying. And she was like sending me these things and wanted me to feel bad or like guilty. I was like, wow, bud, wow. And what did you do? What did you want to do? I don't know. I really think that I should just block her. I'm not sure. Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to contact the school? Do you want me to reach out to the other parent? No, mom. No, mom. I think I'm just going to block her because it's not worth it. And he's 14 now, right? This happened a few years ago. I was like, wow, wow. All that, just the open communication without saying anything about their father or what was happening. Of course, they were exposed to it from
Mhm.
his side, and it's hard to not really know what's going on, but they figured it out. And I have some really emotionally intelligent kids.
Yep. I could literally share the same exact story, and I didn't know this, but I have 2 girls and 2 boys.
Oh, really?
And 28, 25, 21, and 18, so just a little bit older, and they all experienced the same blowing up and learning to set their own boundaries. Same thing, recognizing those behaviors in dating experiences where they're like, "Whoa,"
Oh,
because
yeah.
they recognize it now, and they've had a safe place to process, to talk, to learn. It does pay off. It took time. It took so much time. It took time for my kids to go in and out with their father, in and out, and maybe I'll try again, and you give them grace because, my god, that's what I did. I was in and out, then
Yeah. Yeah.
their nervous system's gonna do the same thing, and giving them that time again to do that, not making it personal, not taking it personal, giving them the space, it really does pay off. So I love that you're adding, because I say this all the time, I'm glad that you're adding to that testimony, really, that it does
Yeah.
work. It does work.
Yeah. It
It's
does. It does work. And
hard, so hard.
it is, and stay consistent. And like my
Mhm.
daughters, I think we all have this fear of I hope my kids don't repeat the same behaviors, right? But my kids use the word gaslight, and even amongst each other, stop gaslighting me. You're not going to gaslight me, right? But like for them to, which a word I've never said to them, but they learn these things. And this guy, my 18-year-old is a freshman in college now, and he was talking about, well, this boy did this and this person did that. And I'm just like, you're a little shady, and I don't like the way you're making me feel. Not gonna entertain you any further, right? But seeing that from my own kids, it's damn, you feel so damn proud.
Mm.
All things that we have gone through, they mean so much. They are meant for something. And, your listeners, they may not feel that yet. They may not see that yet. But I promise you, everything that is happening is for a reason. Is the abuse something that we're deserving of? No. But it's happening for a reason. We are going to be smarter than ever. Knowledge is power. We're going to push through. We are going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It is there. Keep moving forward towards the light always. Don't lose sight of it. And holding on to hope. That is the most important thing. I bought a coffee mug that said hope, and I still have it in my cabinet. And I bought it when I first left. And I first lived in an apartment. I had to go back, and then I left for good. And it was the one thing that kept me going every single day. The days I didn't have money to buy groceries, all of the things that we needed, right? Of, do I have enough money to pay all the bills this month, right? I held on to so much hope, and it kept me going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna just wrap up there. It was so beautifully put, and everything you just said there at the end, so insightful and empowering. And I know you don't know this, but at the end of every episode, I say you really are the chooser in your life. You get to create the life that you want because of this, everything you just said, because
Yes.
you really can. So thank you so much for your time and
Thank you,
wisdom
Amie.
and additional experience that I know a lot of women can relate to. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Absolute pleasure.